Hi. In this video, I want to take you through a couple of case studies. These are projects that members at 10K Designers worked on during their cohort. And the reason we make these videos is if you are a designer or somebody who wants to get into design, whether that is a freelance project, whether that is full time jobs, whether that's internships, what is the best way to showcase your work? These case studies helped 10K Designers members appear for interviews, get discovered, and even get hired. So, in this video, we're going to show you some of these case studies and we'll break down some things that we think work, some things that don't. Together, me and Jayneil have about a decade of experience each. This is just our perspective of what we've observed being in the position of design educators, but also practitioners in this industry. So let's get into it. Very first case study we're going to be checking out is by Bhupendra. Overall, it's a ride sharing for commuting. Beautiful UI. Jayneil, one thing I found super interesting, like even without reading it, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a viewer and seeing this, one thing that really does stand out to me is for a space like this, which is it's corporate, it's commuting, it's ride sharing. It's a very bright UI. Like it's a very positive looking UI. Like it does seem like for the use case, like I would expect if my company kind of had this kind of corporate commute thing, there would be a boring functional app. But I do see a lot of delight in this. Of course, that's purely just based on this cover image, which does, I think, do a really good job at making me want to read it.
I think he does a really good job as you go down in the description of it. But in the title, I would probably rephrase it something as like something simple as that, like just one ride sharing app for commuting. So in the image, when you're seeing that, I saw the tagline and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. So I wish he had used that same simple one line tagline in the title of the Medium case study as well.
I think probably a good one could have also been how I designed a.
Yes.
I always love those kind of framings to give you all a reason for why. I think saying how I designed something makes it subjective because you designed it. And so for the other person reading, it kind of becomes like, oh, I want to know what this person did. So it creates a personal thing where it's like, this person, I've been following them for a while, or I came across their profile, maybe on LinkedIn, and I see their work, and I'm like, what did this person do? I think that's super interesting. Versus there is another approach, which is not this kind of subjective I. It's like objective, like objectively, this is what it was with the right keywords. But revolutionizing corporate commutes with colleague-centric ride-sharing app, it loses out on the person here who made it, which is you, right? It kind of says that this thing happened, like this objective thing happened, but it doesn't say I did it. It doesn't say this is how I did it. But in the end, I would say, don't stress it. It's just the title. Go with what you think is good.
I like the personality, the way he's infused his excitement. Like this case study is your VIP pass. Buckle up for a ride. Like I love that because it just shows your excitement about what you worked on, and you don't have to do it. But if I'm reading through it, it just gets me also excited.
Yeah, it's a good point, Jenny. I think most people are a little hesitant they're hesitant that they don't want to come off as not serious. Let me just say that. They're like, this is like, oh, it's for a job or it's for money. Like I should be serious. What would you say to that?
I think I get it. You have to be a little bit professional, but there's also some room for play. Like at the end of the day, like let's say if a hiring manager looks at this case study and calls you in for an interview, and during the interview, you're not going to be serious the whole time. You might have like a small laugh here and there because I look at this as like a small glimpse into your personality as well. This is a funny anecdote. So at my company, they were trying to hire a senior executive. One of the things the hiring panel said is when you're sitting across from them, you have to get the feel that this is the right design leader that we want. So when they mentioned about that feel, like see, the feel is something you can't really like say like this is what the feel is, but you can communicate the feel via the way you talk. But right now, you're not in a room with someone. The only thing you have they're going for you is this case study. So the words that you have is what makes a big difference. Maybe add one or two lines, right, about your relation with it. Like, oh, I personally commuted in Indranagar in Bangalore to go to my office, and it was very, very hectic. Like, share something about you.
Lovely. And to give my perspective, folks, today it's even more of a reason for you to make it personal and there's one word behind it, chat GPT, you know that there's a lot of people who will either be too cringe. Like when I say cringe, I mean like they will fully rely on chat GPT, and in the prompt they'll say make it fun, and chat GPT just goes berserk and it just like starts using these like nibandh type, oh, like whatever. You can tell when chat GPT is trying too hard, right? So you have those people, and then you also have people who are like very, very serious. Their mindset is that there is a person on the other side who's a serious professional person, and I need to kind of model myself around what a serious person looks like. But in the end, guys, I do not want to hire chat GPT, right? Like if I'm hiring somebody who I'm going to be interacting with, a human, I don't want them to have the personality of chat GPT, guys. Like really, it would be a pain if every day I show up to work or whatever and my colleague has the personality of chat GPT. Guys, three
Yeah.
key objectives. I'm curious to see how he does this one, because I think this is the straightforward objective you can do with the app, the bookings. Eco-friendly practices, this is kind of a side effect as more people choose this option. Community bonds, I don't know if the app does that, but let's see.
I like how he's staying on point with the brand, with the glass morphism. Like even with like showing like all the different apps that are in the ecosystem, he's used the same design and feel. Along the way, also showing that he's done the due diligence of not only looking at options in India, he's looked at abroad, options outside of India for design inspiration and creative ideas. And then he goes above and beyond by actually showing those examples. Like, for example, some of these names outside of India, I didn't even know them. Like Ride
Mm,
Amigos, Carploy, and then he highlights that hey, these were the main takeaways from each of these apps that I took out for a spin.
yeah, it's kind of like the brand guideline. Not only did it apply to his app, but also to these graphics, which is always cool. One point that I'll drop here, right? And I think I try to repeat this point as much as possible. This is for the beginners, right? This is a trap that I want you to avoid. A lot of beginners, especially if you're very early in the journey, you might see this and you might think that, okay, I need to do this, like this particular thing, or I need to do benefits for employer and whatever. The point is what you need to do when you have a problem statement is to find the solution. Any solution will do, bare minimum, but a good solution is better. A case study is you, after the project is over, you are writing about it by doing a retrospective on what exactly happened, how did I do it, and then you are creating these artifacts to tell the story better. The mistake I've seen people do is they flip this around, where they get the problem statement and the first thing they start with is let's start writing the case study. Now, again, in a real company, you are not going to be making this when you're given a problem statement. You're not going to be making this. Like you might put this in the slides when you're doing an, when you're presenting it to the company in an all hands later, you might talk about these benefits. But when you the timeline for any project should be focused on the project, not on the case study of the project. I'm going to skip going through these wireframes, but it's always nice to see them because it does show me like depth of work behind. Not that I will actually try to read what's here, but it's almost like you're showing me the process.
One suggestion I would have is it's really nice that you're using annotations to indicate the different features. So at a glance, I can see like, okay, what's happening inside the app. Cool. But the thing is, this is where I see a lot of designers get sucked into showing the different features for the app they have designed. But as a designer, your goal is not just to show that you can get notifications, you can see your upcoming rides. Like you have to explain why is that feature relevant. Try to focus on the design decisions. Like, hey, I introduce spacing between these two components for easier visibility. Or if you're gonna explain about like anatomy of a car or changing the date, explain the reasoning like added the feature to see the date because it improves the experience this way.
And one way you can remember this, folks, is there's the what and then there's the why. There's what, why, how, right? A lot of times. What is what you've done, right? So that's the first thing which Jayneil said, which is here, it explains what it is, where to. What is it? It's a feature that lets you set your destination and find rides, right? Nothing wrong with saying what, but find the balance. So let me take one example. Maybe for this entire top section, the what is what you're including, so your impact scorecard and whatever. The why is so that this helps with retention, because if I see this, I feel good about my impact and so I am likely to come back again, right? That's a simple why. There's probably more, but that's one simple why. How would be, what are the explorations before you decided on this? So for example, you might have tried a different version that did not show numbers, but maybe it showed something else. Or you came up with the idea for something and eventually you settled on this. The how would be from all these things that you explored, how did you decide this was good? And maybe show before and after or something like that. Now, again, guys, you can't do what, how, why for every single thing that you've done in your design, right? That would become too long and it takes time to explain these things. But that's the balance you have to find, which is what's worth talking about in detail and what can I just little bit talk about. It's okay, that much is enough. I do see he has followed this, by the way, which is I think the images, all of them talk about what primarily. The text talks about why. It is sometimes difficult, by the way, guys, for flows like this, right? Like in your Figma, it's just going to be like 20 screens like this in a row. But sometimes when you need to communicate it, let's say you have a presentation in your company and you're presenting to somebody and you need to make slides or even a case study, you need to make images like this. I like this visualization where it starts from here and then these dots kind of take me through. Yeah, good visualization. Yeah. Okay, let me get Bhupen on. We'll talk about it a little bit. What's up, Bhupendra? How are you?
Hi Abhinav, hi Jayneil. How are you guys?
Doing awesome.
Great, man.
Bhupen, tell me more, bro. What was your experience like, designing this app?
I would say it's my own pain point. I have experienced this problem statement myself. So before this design career, I was working as a mechanical engineer. So I used to travel to work and come back to home. So I've experienced this problem statement myself. Yeah.
I think it'd be awesome if you had like a photo as well, like what you just said to us, right? Like I've experienced this pain problem firsthand. Like I'm just imagining you wearing LNT or something like the mechanical engineer like company dress code and sitting in a car and there's a photo of you that's frustrated, right?
Really nice, bro. Bhupen, can you talk a little bit about since you published the case study, what was the
Mhm.
response like?
Yeah, I think in terms of visuals, I have got very appreciations from all the colleagues. I have been approached by many of the 10K learners. I got to help them for their own case studies. So it's been like very nice.
Nice, bro. Really nice to hear that. So, folks, check out Bhupen's case study. Thanks a lot, Bhupen. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, so Jenny, let's jump in here. Knowledge jar. This is what we're going to be checking out. Now, what makes this case study slightly different, by the way, folks, is this was done not as a brand new app, but as a feature within an existing app. Okay, so this is a feature within an existing gold investment app called Jar by Maitryee.
What really blew me away from Maitri, as soon as I watched it, I don't know what it's exactly called in the YouTube world, but it's that what is it, the POV as you mentioned, like as soon as you go in, there is this video of her holding that phone in her hand and showing that. Immediately as I saw that, you know what? I want to watch this because this is not a mock up. This is a real thing where she's created something because you see that video where she's tapping through it.
Folks, like we've checked out enough case studies such that these kind of patterns are now, I guess, becoming obvious to a lot of you guys, which is even doing something like this is such a massive way to stand out. Because I think the traditional way people, they try to look for mock-ups, right? That's one thing people do, or they try to find one on one of these After Effects mock-ups or something like that. Now, nothing wrong with that. This is easier to take though. It takes less time, and it stands out because not everybody is doing this. So at its core, teaching finance and investment basics. Okay.
And again, I like that Maitri is staying on point with the brand. Like for every single call out that she has, like whether it's for topic selection, any kind of image like why jar, like it's having the same theme that she's using, which is very consistent and nice. So even for the user research, right? She's used that same template, like that same dark blue color that's aligning with the existing jar brand guidelines. So that's really nice. Now, what I like here in the user research is that she's mentioned that I did a user survey with these questions and I got 21 responses. Here's my takeaway. And what she's done is instead of me having to read through the entire user research, it's like, hey, these are my sources. Like, this is where I reached out to get my questions answered. These were the struggles that folks pointed out. And these were their motivations and the ultimate goal and a must have. So it's like she's broken down this complex user research that usually you have to like read through and sift through all the responses into easy to digest and skimmable content.
One of the advantages, by the way, folks, of keeping this kind of consistent style is you can very easily make slides from this, right? So you can imagine what Maitri might be able to do is just take all the images, create slides. Maybe she's already done that, but you can use that like in an interview. You can do a slides walkthrough. So The text part you'll basically be maybe verbally telling, but a lot of this can go into slides. So that's a nice way to do it. I think we're onto something with this framework, the what, why, how. Let's try to apply that here. So checking out this first screen here, full-sized card with key features.
What she's done now is she could have said that, okay, in these ones, these are the different features. But what she has done is between the what, right? She's actually focused on the why. Like full size card with key features in the first fold to grab user attention. So the thing is, from the perspective of the hiring manager, like that grabs her attention. Like, oh, wow, wait, that whole full size card is there to grab my attention. And then because I know the why now, I would might want to go in and look at the what. So I think if you have to choose between the what and the why, you can try to like have both, but in the image, if you can use annotations, try to focus on the why. Because at a glance, we want to see like what are those design decisions, like highlighting in the menu. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, new. So she's highlighting new features in the menu.
Scrolling to the bottom a bit, I see this journey of the intro banner. I think this is a kind of nice example for how, which is finally, I think the version that she went with was this, but she's shown how she reached it. So, like, tried this, and then this. And then with that how, she's talking about why no. So, why not this? Why not this? Why this? Right? So, what, why, how? Nice framework to remember. In fact, I see that here as well. Why, what, how? Meta.
But it's really nice just to see the journey. Like when we look at the journey of new course cards, for example. So she has version
Sure.
1, 2, then she has final. And then what she has done is right below it, she has chosen to expand on the final. So right away in the version 2, she says that, okay, this design goes with the jar design system, but important info like number of lessons, duration of course is missing. So now that's a pain point. She's saying that this version 2 is good, it kind of aligns with the design system, but the important information that I need to be there, it's not there. So then in the final version, she actually mentions that this is functional as well as looking good. And I added bookmark features and obviously the number of lessons that she wanted to do, the duration, right? So she's showing you like where the previous version was lacking, the final version with the things that were missing that were added. This kind of detailed breakdown shows like the path that you have taken as a designer. And I really feel like a lot of you should try to copy this framework if possible.
What, why, how?
Yeah. And you don't have to show all the versions, but you can at least show like a before version and then final version.
And how do you select what to do it for and what not to? A simple way to think about this, which is the harder it was for you to decide, the more likely it is that you should include it. Like if you found it super difficult, you're like, bro, like I don't really know, but like all of these are looking great. And then maybe you spent a lot of time and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have spent so much time on this. Like that's a signal that you should probably talk about it. Because if it took you a long time to figure it out, it's probably, it was a slightly complex decision, which means it's worth talking about. It's worth bringing it up. Now, for these kinds of case studies, folks, you are building something for an existing app, which means you have to take their guidelines, right? Not all apps have their design system publicly available. So you kind of have to reverse engineer. I think Maitry's done a good job at that. I did notice a few gaps, for example, in a few places. So like maybe spacing over here. Point I'm trying to make here, number one, sometimes you have to firstly reverse engineer and extrapolate. So like this design system exists. How do I slightly expand that? And number two, when you're designing apps that are content heavy, like you have pictures, videos, a lot of your design is dependent on how good the content looks. Like imagine Netflix, imagine all the banners and visuals and trailers were bad quality. Like it was not professionally shot. Like you could see, like it was not good. Let's just say that. You will probably think Netflix has a bad UI, but maybe it's just the content that's bad, right? So point I'm trying to make is when you have content heavy apps. So in this case, your design will look better if you use a better photo of Ankur Warikoo. So content is important here. At the same time, the product design challenge with something like this is, let's say you have 200 courses or 300 courses, right? Imaginary scenario. You would have to create these for those 200. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. It's actually totally possible. But you kind of want to know a little bit of the constraints here, right? So sometimes I see people make a really good image, but then I would be like, how will you scale this? Like, how do you imagine 200 other courses using this? And just to share, at Unacademy as well, when we had courses, we actually came up with a system for thumbnails where we said that we're going to use these colors for these categories and we're going to use these patterns for these things. And that was a system that allowed us to scale. So anyway, something to keep in mind.
And as we scroll towards the end of it, right? Like what she's done is she's added the outcome. in the gratitude section, the head of design at Jar actually got on a call with her. And she's actually captured a screenshot of it. Like, kudos to you, Maitryee. Like, you've just blown this out of the water with this. And the reason we're kind of skipping at the end is because a lot of you might be like, oh, well, what's the outcome of this? Why should we even do this? And all these things sounds good, but extra effort. Well, this is what happens when you put in this kind of extra effort. So the reason why you're doing all of this, why you're going above and beyond, why you should add that extra annotation, right? Why you should stay on point, why you should choose to improve an existing app with some features, it's because of this. It's giving you an opportunity. Like, I would bet that out of all the candidates that Vikas has to hire at Jar, he probably would be more excited to talk to someone like Maitryee that has gone above and beyond to understand the app, understand the flows, knows what it's about, knows the business context, and now has suggested some nice improvements.
Let's get Maitryee on. We can talk a little bit about this. What's up, Maitryee?
Thank you for all those feedback. It was really heartwarming.
Can you talk a little bit about what was your process like publishing the case study, getting responses? What was that moment like?
Before publishing the case study, I upload that video on LinkedIn. Vikas connected with me. I got a lot of queries regarding 10K. People asked for my referral to join C8, and I got inbound leads from service-based companies. So kind of curious that this is just 4 screens. How I would make a case study on that. Then I connected with Pavan, and he told me to focus on what you did and your iterations. This how framework he gave to me, and this is really helpful. And I schedule a demo call with Bhupendra for that walkthrough call before Vikas, and he really helped me. All those slides I prepared for the walkthrough calls, and I reuse it here.
Nice, nice.
Did you tag Vikas in that initial LinkedIn post, or was
Yeah,
it just organic?
I did.
Nice. It's very smart. And what was that meeting Vikas like? Like, if you can share some details.
He was curious to know about me and in general my design process. So first couple of minutes we just connected why I transitioned and what I learned, and then about the case study, and he approved me that I have the skills to join as an intern at Jar, and he will let me know whenever they have an opening. And he gave me some feedbacks in general, how should I approach a problem statements and stuff like that.
Love it. Oh my God. See, for everyone that's watching, right, this is like you want to be the top of mind, right? You want to be top of mind for anyone who's hiring. And by putting your stuff out there, you're definitely doing that.
Awesome, Maitryee. Thanks a lot for sharing. Been nice to go through. Looking forward to seeing more from you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.